Well, hello friends, and welcome back to the Scrap Zone. I'm Julie, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how I've made some minor tweaks to the Jingle Joy card set. It's a beautiful card set, but I just wanted to make it my very own. So let's get started. First, take a look at this brand new catalog. It just came out on November 1st. We're going to concentrate on this Jingle Joy card kit. Now they tell you to use intense black ink, and then this kit is ready to go. You've got all of the instructions, the pattern paper, the matching cardstock. So you've got 3 sheets here. They're double-sided. They're super cute. You've got some black cardstock, white cardstock, some clover green, all of your envelopes, and your card bases. Now these are great time savers to have when you're making these cards. Now you're going to be making 16 of these cards. It comes, of course, with its own unique stamp set. It's super pretty, and of course thin cuts to make the job even easier. Now that clover green, I wasn't quite feeling it, so I looked at what other colors I could pick, and you can see those. They're all listed on the pattern paper, and I decided to bring in the Evergreen because I wanted to use this beautiful glitter paper. I'm also going to bring in the flamingo ink because this card kit actually tells you that we're going to use the Oxide ink, which is my first time. You'll see here I'm pulling out the Abandoned Coral, brand new, still in the case, and we're going to compare the two together. So this kit comes with full instructions. I'm going to stay true to the cutting dimensions. They even tell you how to cut or how to place your thin cuts to maximize on your paper, or on your cardstock, I should say. I'm just going to rub off some of the residue here off of the new stamp set, and then we're going to place all of those images on this piece of cardstock, and I'm going to run it through. And I thought, it was a good idea to stamp and die cut every image, every single image, and do it like 5 or 6 times. And then I decided that I was going to change it up a little bit. So here I'm kind of sorting out above, you can't see, I'm sorting them out by card. Now they do tell you how to do it, but I found that I looked on each of the cards, and then I kind of grouped them by cards, and I ran them like 4 times. Now that's the way I was doing it. It was a little bit more cardstock to use, but I found that it was easier to sort, and at the end it kind of saved me a little bit of time. Now let's start card number 1, and we're gonna try this Distress Oxide ink. Now, like I told you, brand new to this product, you've got these really nice little foam covers, and you just have to make sure that you pop them right on the center of your tool, and then we're just going to go ahead and use it. Now the first thing I see here is that, wow, this is really kind of juicy or creamy. It's really, really intense. So where I'm going to start, I'm going to have a little present that's going to be right there. So if it's not perfect, I'm not going to worry too much about it. So I'm going ahead here and I'm adding that in, and I'm kind of liking the way it's going on. It's very dark, very creamy, and this ink actually stays on top of the cardstock. It doesn't get absorbed like dye-based ink. Not bad for my first try. So I'm going to add a little bit of water, because the other unique thing about this ink is that when you add water, it reacts, and you're going to see these little droplets. I'm just going to use just a Kleenex to pick it up, and I'm going to bring it up here, and look at that. You've got these little droplets of water. Now you cannot do that with dye-based ink. So okay, a plus for the Distress Oxide. Let's move on to the second card, and here I can tell that because my tool is a little bit more saturated, it went down a lot easier. So tip number 1, it would be good to keep those little sponge, like 1 per color, and when you're using it, or at least have them by family colors, it's a lot easier when that tool is more saturated. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and I'm just going to flick it with my fingers here. I find that you have a little bit more control of where those droplets are falling, but again, I'm just experimenting here. I've never done this, so I might be doing something wrong. Who knows? So here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the same tool, and I'm going to use the dye-based ink. Now the first thing I have to tell you, oh my gosh, I really have to press harder, and I had to put quite a bit of ink to get it to show on my card front. But I really like it. Like, I like the way that it showed up. So we're going to do 2 cards with the Oxide and 2 cards with the dye-based. Now again, same thing here. Once my tool was a little bit more saturated with the ink, it was a lot easier to put that on the card front. So we're going to put the card pretty much the way it was designed, and I'm following the instructions, more or less. And I'm just adding a lot of dimensions with those little gifts, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment right at the bottom. Now this here is awesome. Stickles has been around for ages, but it packs a punch. It's like this tiny little bottle of glittery goodness. I really, really like it. So we're going to finish off here. So these are, again, you get 4 cards of the same design, and I was just showing you the Flamingo and the Distress Oxide. So we're moving here to card number 2, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to compare the 2 inks. Now I wanted to color in those little presents, and I brought in, it's a new marker, it's the Jade green shade, and I used the lightest shade of them, and I found that it was a little bit dark. That's okay, we'll use something else, just give me a minute. And here I'm going ahead and I'm adding that little circle of coral goodness right in the middle, and again, it's sitting right on top. I'm not used to the amount of ink that actually shows up when you're just lightly rubbing it on the top, and you can see the little droplets that I've added, and that's just water. We're going to do the same here with the dye-based ink. Now it's still pretty, but I'm having to use quite a bit more ink to achieve the same result. So I guess it comes down to preference. I like the dye-based ink in this because it matches my paper perfectly, but I really like the Oxide ink because of that pop of color that is just so easy to achieve. This card base here that's on the black and the white, you might think at first, oh, I think I cut this wrong. You didn't cut it wrong. If you get the kit, it's actually a little bit longer. That white piece is a little bit longer, and that was done by design. So I really like the design of this card. It was easy to put together, and you see how it kind of sneaks on top of that green piece. So it was really, again, super simple to put together, and we're going to add a little bit of stickles, and there you have it. Completion of card number 2. Now remember I told you that I used the marker, and I was like, it's a little bit too dark. So I went back to something I love to do all the time, is that I'm going to use the exact same ink. I'm going to bring in my clear shimmer brush. I've just squeezed a little bit of ink in the lid of my ink pad, and I'm just going to color with my shimmer brush. And you have 2 things. It's the perfect color and it's got shimmer. So bonus for that. I actually prefer that over the marker. And here I'm adding just a tiny bit of stickles, and instead of just doing a straight line, I decided to do little dots all the way up. So we're moving right along to card number 4. Nope, card number 3. And in this card here, we're going to use the Oxide again, and we're going to use the dye-based ink. And this one is kind of different. You don't need the tool. We're going to need a little brush. So I'm using just a water brush here. This is the wide one. I'm going to bring in my all-purpose mat, and I've cut it down just for the videos. You don't don't cut down your mat unless you want to, but in the videos it just makes it easier for me, so I've cut it in half. And you saw me here just rubbing the ink pad across the cardstock, adding a little bit of color, and it was like, okay, I'm sold. This is cool. Let's try this again. So you're just rubbing your ink and it's sitting right on top of your cardstock. You add a little bit of water and then you just brush it across, and look at that. That is so cool. Now, a big win for the Distress Oxide ink for this technique. But you know what? You can do some really cool techniques with dye-based ink too. So I kind of wanted to do something with this. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a little bit of ink on my all-purpose mat. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and we're just going to use that plastic smooshing technique. So I'm just picking up the ink and I'm just dropping it on the top portion of that cardstock piece. So I'm trying to mimic that same kind of water brushing that I was able to do with the Oxide ink, but I can't do it with the dye-based ink. So I'm just doing something a little bit different, and you know what? I really liked how this turned out as well. Now, just the little smooshing on the white was not enough, so I added a little bit of distressing with the tool, and look at that. You've got two different looks with two different inks, and they are equally pretty. So we're going to add a little bit of ink to those little presents, and of course, again, because the ink sits right on top, it really saturates that cardstock and it works beautifully. So we're going to stamp our little sentiment here, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I actually reverted back to just black ink. The intense black ink is great, but I find that I get a better impression when I stamp my sentiments with just straight black ink. So that's something you might want to try. I'm going to add the silver stickles to jazz up this card, and we're going to move to, we're still working on card number 3, but I kind of did 3 different variations. Now the first one was with the Oxide inks, which was really cool. And then I just kind of played up with the colors that I have in this paper collection. Now there's raspberry and there's flamingo. And I kind of like the flamingo. Out of the 2 pinks, I really like the way that this one turned out. But look at that really cool technique that we were able to achieve with that ink. So here you've got kind of like 3 variations on that design. So we're moving right along to card number 4, and we're almost done here. And this one here is really pretty because it's pretty much black and white with a pop of green. So you're just going to assemble this, and of course it's all in the instructions. I'm going to add here this really nice green, so it's kind of like the Evergreen glitter paper, just instead of the branding strip, and I really like the look of it. It just made it more regal. So I'm going to bring in my little mat here once again, and I'm going to add a little bit of distressing to that white piece. I just felt that it needed a little something, and I guess because I'm playing with the Oxide inks, I just wanted to kind of experiment with a little bit more of distressing with different colors. I'm going to stamp this little cute border at the bottom. I'm not going to go all the way across because I'm going to add that present right on the right hand side, so I'm not going to go all the way to the end of that white piece. I'm just going to cover that up. I'm going to add the raspberry for that little heart and see how that present just hid the fact that my little border at the bottom doesn't go all the way across. I'm going to add this small present, and the stickle comes back into play, but this time you actually kind of rub it on that little gift. Now you can use a spatula or your finger. Here I've got like a dollar store brush. Don't use a good brush. And you can just brush it all along and then just wipe it off on a little baby wipe, and you're all done. So I really hope you've enjoyed my rendering of this kit. It was a lot of fun, and I really like that I was able to compare the Distress Oxide ink with the dye-based ink. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're brand new to my channel, welcome. you might want to hit the subscribe button to see more crafty projects. If you'd like to see more Christmas cards inspiration, click this link right here. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.